When 10 surveillance drones began haunting my skies, I knew something was wrong. But when I shot one down and the HOA dragged me to court for property damage, I uncovered a web of corruption, control, and secrets they never thought I'd survive, let alone destroy. It started with a soft buzzing, barely audible at first, like a lazy wasp hovering somewhere just out of sight. I didn't think much of it the first couple times. Figured it was a neighbor's kid with a new toy, maybe testing out a drone over the open fields. Living on the edge of nowhere was supposed to mean peace and quiet, but apparently even peace now came with a battery and propellers. My name's Lucas Bryant. I live alone on about 6 acres just outside of San Diego County, land I bought after retiring from the Navy. I'd poured years into this place, built my house from the ground up, restored an old barn into a workshop, planted a garden, even started beekeeping just to keep things interesting. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, away from the noise, away from people, definitely away from any kind of homeowners association. About a quarter-mile east of my property is a newer development, one of those pre-packaged suburban pods with beige homes, identical mailboxes, and weekly lawn committees. The place is governed by an HOA called Willow Creek Preserve. I never had anything to do with them, never planned to. My land isn't part of their development, and my deed makes that crystal clear. So imagine my confusion when I found a letter taped to my gate, printed on letterhead that read, Willow Creek Preserve Homeowners Association. It was signed by someone named Karen Matthews, who, judging by the tone, thought she was God's personal liaison to the suburbs. The letter was a list of demands: repaint my house in a more neighborhood-appropriate palette, remove the unregulated agricultural structure, which I assume meant the beehives, and eliminate unauthorized signage from the property. Oh, and start paying HOA dues retroactively. I stood there reading it 3 times over, then laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. I figured it was a mistake. Surely someone just dropped the wrong letter off at the wrong place. My land's not within their boundaries. Case closed. So I did what any reasonable man would do. I tossed the letter into the fire pit and moved on with my day. 3 mornings later, I was watering the garden when I heard that same buzzing again. This time louder, closer. I looked up just in time to see a small quadcopter hovering over my chicken coop. It hovered, pivoted, then glided slowly toward the house before disappearing behind the roof. A minute later, it was back, this time facing me. I raised a hand in greeting, unsure if someone was watching through the camera. The drone didn't respond. It simply hovered, recorded, and then zipped off over the tree line. By the end of the week, I counted 5 drones. By the next, 10. They flew on a routine like clockwork. Early morning just before sunrise, then again mid-afternoon, and once more in the evening. Each pass they seemed more invasive, swooping lower, lingering longer. I watched one hover over the upstairs bathroom window for a solid 30 seconds. Another buzzed so close to the garden it knocked over a tomato cage. I started keeping a pair of binoculars by the kitchen sink just to track their patterns. I tried jamming their signals, cheap blocker I picked up online, but whoever was flying them had thought ahead. These weren't your off-the-shelf backyard toys. They were military-grade commercial drones with extended range and obstacle avoidance. Someone had dropped serious money on this little surveillance campaign. And then she came. Right on cue. I was sanding a set of planter boxes when I heard the tires crunch up the gravel driveway. A white BMW SUV with tinted windows pulled up to my front gate, and out stepped a woman who looked exactly how you'd expect someone named Karen to look. Perfectly manicured, sharp pantsuit, sunglasses that cost more than my table saw, and the general demeanor of someone who thought Starbucks employees should be court-martialed for getting her name wrong. "Mr. Bryant," she called out as she approached. I'm Karen Matthews. I'm the president of the Willow Creek Preserve HOA. I didn't answer, just kept sanding. She didn't seem to notice, or didn't care. I've been trying to contact you regarding your non-compliance with the community covenant, she said, now standing just outside the fence. We've given you ample time to repaint your structure, remove the agricultural hazards, and register with the association. I looked up. This isn't a community, this is private land, my land. I don't fall under your association. She blinked as if I'd told her gravity didn't apply to her. That may be your interpretation, but the board and our legal team believe otherwise. Your proximity to Willow Creek makes you subject to our environmental and visual ordinances. Non-participation is not an option. I snorted. Lady, I've got deeds, surveys, and the original land grant in a fireproof safe inside. I'm not in your development. You don't get to tell me what color my porch is. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile you'd expect from a crocodile mid-roll. We'll see. And with that, she turned and walked off. The SUV disappeared down the drive, leaving nothing behind but dust and that now familiar whine of rotors as a drone swept by moments later, as if marking territory. That night, I reviewed the footage from my outdoor cams. Every pass, every angle, 10 drones, same types, same timing. I mapped their trajectories and noted every altitude breach. They weren't just passing over, they were watching, cataloging, collecting. I didn't know what Karen's game was yet, but I was damn sure I wasn't about to play by her rules. It didn't take long before the buzzing went from an annoyance to a full-blown psychological assault. The damn things were everywhere, over the garden, behind the barn, skimming the tree line at dusk like little airborne spies. I'd gone from trying to ignore them to tracking every flight path like a man preparing for war, which, in hindsight, I probably was. I filed my first formal complaint with the San Diego County Sheriff's Department on a Tuesday morning. Walked right in, showed them a thumb drive full of drone footage and a printed map of the flight patterns I'd recorded. The desk sergeant took one look at me, sweaty from the walk, beard scruffy, sleeves rolled up, and asked, "And what exactly do you want us to do, sir?" "Stop the illegal surveillance. It's private property. They're violating airspace, probably flying without line-of-sight control. I've got drones hovering outside my windows." He blinked. "Are they armed?" I stared at him. "Do they have to be?" That's when he introduced me to Officer Paul Henderson. Short, stocky, mid-50s, the kind of guy who looked like he should have retired a decade ago but stuck around to make sure people still addressed him as officer. He gave me a tight-lipped smile and ushered me into a back office where I repeated my story. He listened, nodded in all the right places, then leaned back and said, "Look, Mr. Bryant, it's complicated. Technically, if the drones are flying above your property but not landing or touching down, they're in what's called navigable airspace, FAA jurisdiction. Even if they're filming through my goddamn bathroom window? Well, unless you can prove they're being used for harassment, it's hard to press charges. Drones are tricky that way. There's a gray area." I leaned forward. "I have over 2 hours of footage. They're operating in coordinated shifts, 10 units, consistently. This isn't some neighborhood kid with a Christmas gift. This is organized." Paul's expression didn't change. "I'll file the report, but unless you're in immediate danger or have proof of criminal intent, our hands are tied. I'd suggest contacting the FAA. Maybe a civil suit if you're really concerned." He stood and offered a handshake. I didn't take it. Back home, I did as advised, filed a report with the FAA's UAS Unmanned Aircraft Systems complaint system, submitted my evidence, and got an automated confirmation. "Thank you for your submission. A representative will review your complaint within 30 to 90 days. That was it. 90 days. I knew what that meant. No one was coming. So I doubled down. I installed 2 new high-resolution night vision security cameras with tracking capability. One on the house, one on the barn. I mounted a GoPro to a telescopic pole on the roof to get a full panoramic shot. I even set up motion-triggered floodlights near the chicken coop and garden. If they wanted to fly in, I was going to light them up like a stage show and record every second. That's when I noticed something else. The drones weren't just flying by anymore, they were observing, holding position, tilting, tracking me when I moved. I'd walk from the back porch to the barn and see one dip lower as if to follow. One hovered so low over the compost pile that it tripped the motion sensors. Another paused directly above my beehives and hovered there for a full minute, just long enough for the bees to panic and swarm. I got stung 6 times pulling them off the poor bastards. I tried installing a signal jammer, technically not legal, but I figured at this point the rules were being bent all around me. It worked for about 10 seconds before the drone adjusted and flew out of range like nothing happened. These weren't hobby drones. They were top grade, possibly custom built. Someone had put serious money into them. I wasn't just being watched, I was being targeted. And then I found out how far this went. That weekend, I drove into town to get some welding supplies. At the hardware store, I ran into a guy I knew in passing. Miguel. Worked IT for some of the developments around the area. We got to chatting, and when I mentioned the HOA situation and the drones, his face darkened. "Willow Creek?" he asked. "Yeah." He glanced around, leaned closer. "I used to do some back-end work for them. Karen, she's got a thing for surveillance. Bought a fleet of drones under the guise of neighborhood security. Had them installed with advanced optics and heat detection. But the kicker? The flight control software is centralized, server-based. HOA has full logs." I stared at him. "You're telling me there's a server with the actual flight paths?" Miguel nodded. "And video. Audio too if she turned on that module. You didn't hear it from me, but there's metadata, timestamps, locations, control IDs. Some of those drones were manually redirected mid-flight. It's all traceable." I asked if he had access. He gave me a look. "I was let go a month ago, but I made a backup." Later that night, a flash drive showed up in my mailbox, tucked inside an envelope with a sticky note that simply read, "For justice." I plugged it into my laptop and watched as a series of files opened. Video feeds, path logs, user IDs. One name kept appearing in the control data. K. Matthews, admin. Karen Matthews. The president of the HOA was flying drones over my house, personally, repeatedly, deliberately, and I was done waiting. The morning I snapped, the sky was painfully clear, bright, cloudless, sharp enough to make the world look too clean. Too peaceful. It should have been an ordinary day, coffee, chores, puttering around the workshop. But paranoia has a way of turning even sunshine into something hostile. The buzzing started before I even finished my first cup. I stepped onto the back deck and there it was, one of the drones hovering low enough that I could see dust on its rotors. It shifted slightly, nose angling toward me, camera lens adjusting with a small mechanical twitch. I flipped it off. The drone drifted sideways as if offended. For a few minutes, I pretended to ignore it. I watered the tomatoes, checked the beehives, tried to act like a man who wasn't being stalked by airborne appliances. But the buzzing followed me from place to place, always at the edge of my hearing, always too close. When I went inside to shower, I heard it again, right outside the bathroom window. That was it. I grabbed a towel, barely dried off, stomped downstairs, and headed to the gun cabinet. No lethal weapons. I wasn't about to end up on the news as local veteran opens fire on neighborhood. I chose my air rifle, a high-powered pneumatic pellet gun I used for pest control. Legal, accurate, quiet. Outside, the drone was hovering low, maybe 15 or 20 feet off the ground, right above the deck railing, almost like it was waiting for me. I could see the tiny gimbal-mounted camera tracking me as I stepped out, slowly, calmly. I raised the rifle. The drone jerked backward as if whoever was controlling it had suddenly panicked. Too late. I exhaled and squeezed the trigger. The pellet hit dead center. A sharp crack followed by the high-pitched whine of a motor failing, and the drone spiraled down like a wounded bird. It landed with an ugly crunch on the gravel path near the garden beds. One down. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, there was just silence, the first silence in weeks. That lasted all of maybe 10 minutes. A black SUV rolled into the driveway, lights flashing. Not police lights, just the kind meant to intimidate. The passenger door opened and out stepped none other than Karen Matthews, followed by Officer Paul Henderson, the same man who had shrugged at my complaints days earlier. Karen had her arms crossed, jaw set like she was about to deliver a closing argument in front of the Supreme Court. "Mr. Bryant," she announced, voice high and sharp, "you have destroyed property belonging to the Willow Creek Homeowners Association." I leaned against the deck railing, rifle still in hand, barrel pointed toward the ground. That property was trespassing, on my land, spying on me. Karen scoffed. It was performing routine aerial compliance monitoring, completely legal. I pointed at the shattered drone. "Monitoring inside my bathroom window?" Officer Henderson cut in, voice carefully neutral. "Mr. Bryant, step away from the weapon. This is an air rifle. Doesn't matter, put it down." I set it on the railing slowly. Henderson approached the broken drone, crouched down, examined it like it was a fallen soldier. He straightened up and turned toward me. "I'm placing you under temporary detainment for destruction of private property." "No," I snapped. "You're not." Karen's lips curled. "You don't get to refuse arrest." I walked to the porch, grabbed a folder, and tossed it to Henderson. Inside were printed copies of drone flight logs pulled from Miguel's flash drive. He flipped through them, his face tightening as he saw the username repeated over and over. K. Matthews Admin. "You were piloting these," I said, staring at Karen. "Personally, repeatedly. You have been spying on me." Karen recovered faster than I expected. "That data was stolen, illegally obtained. It won't be admissible." Henderson didn't look at her. He kept staring at the pages. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "And there's more. Audio, video, metadata. If you want to push a criminal complaint, then we go to court. And discovery will be public record. You really want to explain this on the stand?" For the first time since I'd met her, Karen hesitated. She opened her mouth to speak, not to me, but to Henderson. "Paul, do something." There it was. Paul, not Officer Henderson, just Paul. He looked at her, then at the folder, then back at me. His jaw clenched. "This isn't over," Karen hissed. She turned sharply and walked toward the SUV. Henderson lingered, still holding the folder, looking like a man who just realized he might be on the wrong side of a very large, very public mess. "Don't leave town," he muttered. "I live here," I said. "Remember?" They drove off without the drone. I stood in the driveway, the broken machine at my feet, and felt the strangest sense of calm. Because for the first time, I wasn't the one reacting. They were. The envelope arrived 2 days later. Certified mail, stamped with the HOA's smug little acorn logo and far too much expensive ink for something meant to be intimidating. I didn't need to open it to know what it was, but I did anyway, mostly for the ritual of it. Sure enough, an official notice of civil litigation, Willow Creek Preserve Homeowners Association versus Lucas Bryant. Charges: destruction of property, harassment, obstruction of community oversight. Damages sought: $18,500 for loss of surveillance infrastructure, plus legal fees and, just for flavor, an injunction to prevent me from interfering with the association's regulatory activities. They wanted a court order to stop me from defending my own property. I called Sarah. Sarah Grayson had been my lawyer for smaller real estate issues before. Smart, sharp-tongued, and had a talent for making judges laugh right before delivering a legal killing blow. When she read through the paperwork, she let out a long, theatrical sigh and said, "This is either going to be fun, or it's going to make me hate rich people all over again." We got to work immediately. She requested a preliminary hearing to challenge the injunction and countersued the HOA for trespass, harassment, and emotional distress. Her language in the filing was beautiful, like a love letter written by a pit bull with a law degree. She called their drone program a gross and calculated violation of federally protected privacy rights, and accused the HOA of acting with arrogance and impunity unbecoming any governing body, real or imagined. It didn't take long before things escalated. Karen doubled down. She went on a PR blitz, issuing statements through HOA newsletters, posting in neighborhood Facebook groups, and even getting a friendly local paper to run a piece titled, "Drone-Wielding Vigilante Harasses Peaceful Community." The photo they used was a 10-year-old military ID of me in fatigues, cropped just enough to make me look vaguely dangerous. The article quoted an unnamed source describing me as unstable, antisocial, possibly dangerous. Meanwhile, more neighbors, people I'd never spoken to, started showing up at the edge of my property. Some yelled, some filmed, a few just stared like I was some kind of zoo exhibit. Karen even held a community emergency meeting at the HOA clubhouse, where she pitched a vote to not extend the HOA boundaries, retroactively annexing my property into their domain. Never mind the fact that my land wasn't even platted in the same development. The sheer audacity was almost impressive. Sarah, bless her, was unfazed. She smiled through it all, sipping cold brew like it was a courtroom cocktail. "Let her talk," she told me. "Every word she says is more rope for the gallows." And then came the gold mine. Miguel, our IT angel, contacted Sarah directly. Turns out he'd held on to more than just flight logs. He had administrative access screenshots and internal emails, calendar invites for surveillance schedule reviews, and a damning Slack exchange where Karen explicitly instructed HOA staff to gather as much behavioral data as possible on Mr. Bryant. He's a growing liability to community cohesion. Better still, we found emails between Karen and Officer Henderson. Not formal correspondence, casual messages sent from private accounts. In one, she thanked him for helping smooth over that nuisance complaint and said, "Your assistance is always appreciated. HOA's next community grant fund is being finalized. Just a little something to help the department." Sarah's smile sharpened. "Congratulations," she said. "We just stepped into criminal territory." She filed a motion to compel discovery of HOA financial records and sent a copy of the emails to the district attorney's office. She also formally notified the UFA that we were preparing a lawsuit against them for systemic negligence in response to documented violations of federal drone regulations over private land. That got attention. Within 72 hours, we received a politely frantic email from someone at FAA compliance requesting a meeting. Sarah's response was direct. "You've had 45 days and 2 evidence submissions. Now you're worried? We'll see you in court unless you do your damn job." Then, during the first court hearing, everything cracked wide open. Karen showed up with her lawyer, a slick LA type who looked like he charged extra just to frown. They tried to paint me as combative, volatile, and uncooperative with standard community integration efforts. Their evidence? my refusal to comply with HOA letters, and the fact that I shot down a drone with violent intent. Sarah stood, adjusted her blazer, and calmly introduced the court to Exhibit A, a full video reel from the drone that had hovered outside my upstairs window. Then, Exhibit B, the flight log metadata with Karen's control credentials. Then, Exhibit C, the financial records linking HOA donations to Henderson's discretionary fund. Karen's face paled by the time we reached Exhibit F's. Her lawyer asked for a recess. The judge didn't even blink. Motion denied. Continue. By the end of the day, the injunction against me was tossed. The court ruled that I had acted within my rights by shooting down a drone trespassing in protected airspace. A full hearing was scheduled for the civil case and counterclaim. But more importantly, the judge ordered an independent audit of Willow Creek HOA's drone program and referred Officer Henderson to Internal Affairs. As we walked out of the courthouse, Sarah handed me a lollipop from her bag. "You're officially the most interesting case I've had this year," she said. "And that includes the guy who got sued for building a moat." It felt like the entire HOA structure began to crack all at once, as if someone had finally yanked the wrong thread and the whole stitched-together illusion started coming apart at the seams. And for once, I wasn't the one under siege. Karen was. The audit ordered by the judge was underway within a week, and from what little Sarah could glean from the early filings, it wasn't just bad. It was biblical. The Willow Creek Preserve HOA had authorized over $160,000 in drone equipment and surveillance tech over an 18-month period. That alone would have raised eyebrows, but what torched their credibility completely was where some of the money had gone. Karen had authorized security upgrades through a shell company. K&M Community Services, registered under her son's name. He wasn't a contractor, wasn't a drone specialist, he wasn't even employed. The company was just a mailbox in a strip mall between a vape shop and a dry cleaner. But the HOA had paid him nearly $60,000 for advanced maintenance and oversight. When this detail surfaced in the audit report, 3 members of the HOA board resigned on the spot. The rest tried to distance themselves fast. A public statement was posted on the HOA website the next day. The association does not condone unauthorized use of surveillance technology nor any individual acting outside of their designated authority, which was corporate speak for, "Please don't sue us, we're not all crazy." Too late. By then, residents of Willow Creek were furious. Turns out I wasn't the only one Karen had been spying on, just the most stubborn. One couple discovered drone footage of their backyard hot tub nights. Another guy found out that Karen had recorded and reported him for building a tool shed that was not in keeping with neighborhood harmony, which delayed his mortgage refinancing for months. A class action suit was forming before my countersuit even reached the second hearing. Meanwhile, Officer Paul Henderson wasn't faring much better. After the Internal Affairs Department got wind of his relationship with Karen, things moved quickly. Miguel's emails showed enough to suggest collusion, but the kicker came from a source Sarah hadn't expected. A rookie deputy named Lexi Young, who filed a whistleblower report stating that Henderson had told her to sit on the FAA complaints because those HOA folks take care of us during budget season. Sarah sent the report straight to the district attorney. The next time Henderson showed his face in court, he was wearing a suit instead of a badge and sitting on the wrong side of the aisle. Formal charges followed within days: obstruction of justice, abuse of authority, and accepting improper benefits. His lawyer tried to work out a plea deal before things hit the press, but someone leaked the story. Probably not Miguel. Probably. It was around this time that I stopped being the neighborhood pariah and started getting nods in town again. A guy at the gas station clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Didn't think anyone would stand up to that witch." I wasn't sure whether he meant Karen or the HOA in general, but either way I nodded back. Then came the ruling. The judge reviewed both sides: the HOA's original claim against me, my countersuit, the federal drone regs, the footage, the financials, and the absolutely damning audit. In the courtroom, Karen looked like a stretched-out rubber band on the verge of snapping. Her lawyer had lost the permanent smirk. The ruling was read aloud in a tone so dry it could have ignited dust. The HOA's claim was dismissed with prejudice. My countersuit was upheld. The judge awarded me $1 million in damages, split between emotional distress, violation of privacy, trespass, legal fees, and punitive damages. The court also recommended Karen Matthews be referred for federal investigation for willful abuse of FAA-regulated systems, fraudulent use of association funds, and unlawful surveillance. As if on cue, a pair of federal marshals showed up in the back of the courtroom. Karen was arrested before she could even stand up. She didn't scream. She didn't resist. She just went quiet. And for the first time since she darkened my driveway, I almost believed she understood what she'd done. Almost. I walked out of that courthouse feeling like I'd just exhaled for the first time in weeks, maybe months. Reporters shoved microphones in my face, but I didn't say much. Just one sentence. She thought the sky belonged to her. Money doesn't fix everything, but $1 million makes for a damn good apology letter. I didn't touch it at first. Let it sit in the account like a silent monument to everything I'd gone through. Blood money from a war I didn't start. But eventually I figured if they were going to hand me a prize for surviving suburbia's darkest impulses, I might as well put it to use. The first thing I did was build a greenhouse. Not some dinky plastic frame thing either. I mean a real structure, steel-reinforced glass, automated temperature controls, grow lights that made the whole place glow like an alien ship at night. Inside, I expanded the garden, started growing more exotic stuff. Passion fruit, rare peppers, heirloom tomatoes the size of grapefruits. I turned part of it into an apiary classroom with proper viewing hives and safety gear for guests. A few months later, I invited the local elementary school to bring their science class out. 30 kids in bee suits, wide-eyed and buzzing louder than the actual bees. One girl asked me if bees could sting drones. I told her, they sure tried. Sarah showed up for the first tour. She brought cupcakes and a friend from the California Property Rights Council, who wanted me to speak at their annual conference in Austin. "You're kind of a symbol now," she said. "People love the guy who stood up to big HOA and won." I wasn't sure I wanted to be a symbol, but I agreed to go. Meanwhile, Willow Creek wasn't just shaken, it was gutted. After Karen's arrest, the remaining board members voted to dissolve the HOA entirely. Not reform, not replace leadership, just shut it all down. They sent out letters saying the association had failed in its duties and trust, and would be winding down operations in coordination with county oversight. Neighbors, former ones I guess, started showing up at my place with apologies. Some brought baked goods, others brought beer. A few offered to help rebuild the fence line where one of the drones had crash-landed months before. I didn't hold grudges. Well, not many. The guy with the hot tub footage joined the class action suit. Last I heard, it was still in pre-trial motions, but his lawyer was thrilled with the precedent my case set. Apparently, surveillance abuse was a hot topic now. Officer Henderson pled out. His lawyer struck a deal. 9 months probation. A hefty fine and mandatory resignation. He gave a statement during sentencing, something about regrettable judgment and community pressure. The judge didn't even look up. As for the FAA, well, they blinked. After Sarah sent that second formal notice threatening a federal lawsuit for negligence, we received a call from their legal department. Polite, concerned, panicked in the way that only federal agencies get when they smell press coverage. They offered to meet. Sarah went. She came back grinning. "We're not suing," she said. "They're issuing an official apology, creating a revised complaint procedure for drone overflight violations and adding language about private airspace invasion to their next regulation update." In exchange, we agreed not to file the suit. It was a win. Not just for me, for everyone who'd ever been told nothing we can do by a lazy bureaucrat while a camera stared into their windows. Miguel got a job at a cybersecurity firm 2 towns over. Sarah recommended him personally. He sent me a bottle of whiskey and a thank you card that said, "For making it rain, legally." And Karen? She ended up with 2 years probation, 6 months house arrest, and a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation. The court seized her personal drone equipment and barred her from participating in any housing associations or governance groups for 10 years. I heard she moved into a mobile home outside of Palm Springs. No drones, no HOA, just heat and silence. 6 months later, I hosted a barbecue. Not just any barbecue, the kind where people bring more food than they can eat. Kids chase chickens through the garden and someone inevitably knocks over a bucket of lemonade without anyone getting mad. The new fence was painted, the greenhouse was thriving, and the bees were as happy as I'd ever seen them. I invited everyone, old neighbors, new ones, the school teacher who ran the bee education program, the guy from the hardware store who lent me his post driver when the fence went down. Even the hot tub couple showed up, now minor celebrities in the local paper thanks to their class action updates. Sarah came with her wife and brought a batch of deviled eggs so good people whispered about them like contraband. Miguel rolled in late with a laptop under one arm and a drone under the other. His own, freshly built, completely unarmed and intended purely for capturing aerial footage of the new garden. He asked permission before launching it. I made him say it twice just to be sure. As the sun started to dip and the lights strung between the trees kicked on, I stood near the grill and looked around. Kids were running under the hive's safety netting, pointing at the queen in the observation box. Sarah was talking with a city councilman about the need for local drone ordinances. Someone was playing guitar near the fire pit, and I was, for once, completely at peace. One of the teachers asked me if I was going to turn the property into a full education center. I shrugged. I just wanted to be left alone. She smiled. "Well, now you're surrounded." That got a laugh out of me. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the last bottle was corked, I walked out into the yard. The moon was high. The greenhouse glowed like a quiet lantern. Crickets hummed. A few bees, disturbed by the lights, buzzed lazily in their boxes. I stood there for a long moment, breathing it all in. No drones, no buzzing overhead, no sudden motor whir, just the sound of land finally being left alone. Then from the side gate came the low rumble of tires on gravel. I turned, immediately on edge, but it was just the mailman, at nearly 10 at night. He handed me an envelope with a sheepish look. "Sorry, this one came with a rush tag, thought it might be important." I opened it. Inside was a certificate. FAA Advisory Council Recognition of Civic Contribution, presented to Lucas Bryant, for advocacy and awareness in airspace integrity and privacy law reform. At the bottom it was signed by an actual FAA administrator, with an actual pen and an actual note that said, "Sometimes it takes one stubborn man with a pellet gun to make Washington pay attention." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped it. The next morning I nailed it right above the greenhouse door, next to a laminated photo of Karen being led out of the courthouse in handcuffs. A trophy wall, I guess, but mostly a reminder. If they try to take your sky, aim carefully and document everything.